So welcome to Mindshifters Radio, and
Yay.
glad your journey homeward was so eventful.
It was, and I got to
The
share your
baggage.
work. I lost baggage again, but that's okay because it's letting go of the baggage. But the one was getting the woman, that woman, I just got the whole space while she cried, and I just, I said, there's always, how is this serving you? And I got to go. I reviewed the worksheet with her. I had him there, so we went through it, the whole thing, and how to change your
Was
mind
this at the airport?
actually on the airplane on a 4-hour flight. So I did,
Awesome.
I did lots of teaching on there. So
Oh,
yeah, it was
that's fabulous.
and so I gave her the contact information. I said, this is a game changer. I told her I just came from the retreat. And then also we have a commonality with Shirdi Sai Baba, which I knew that he brought that manifestation with me, with her. I've known her many lifetimes. I could feel it was a beautiful exchange. Beautiful. So yeah, everything was really good.
Awesome. So how would you sum up your experience of your, what was it, 14 days in
Well, a game changer for me because I have been doing this work, really devotional for since 2011. And then I couldn't break free. I wasn't sure what's going on, keep doing it, but feeling locked or blocked. I'm going to use that. And then being able to see my content of my mind, that stuff that was holding me down and fettered, and then you releasing me through the body work, like my neck. Oh my gosh, I've never had this movement ever. Like it's just wow. So
Iron Bar's gone? That's awesome.
yeah, so life changing. Yeah, life changing. That's how I'd sum it up. It's and I
Sweet.
get to be, and even like I'm really, like you said, I'm really aware of my carbon-based thoughts. And then I just wait, and that's not true.
Aware of them and no longer addicted would be
Yeah, and
the
I say
the
that's not
key.
true, or when I make up a story about myself, that's not true, or I make up a story about someone else, that's simply not true.
Nice.
That's not true. So yeah, I'm excited to see what will be revealed.
Cool. Well, that feedback's consistent with what we've gotten, or what I've gotten from everybody who's done the quantum still point. I think it's the primary addiction. It's the core addiction, is the addiction to whatever's going on in carbon-based memory, to the carbon-based memory story. And breaking that addiction is the root, I think, of breaking all other addictions, and opens the space for a whole new level of work. So
Yeah,
congratulations. Your willingness was awesome.
yeah, and you know what? I can feel like how this is an antenna. So there's still stuff going on in here, and I'm working. There was something on the inside of my mouth I had to work last night, which I did. But it's all I can feel. It's starting to come in here, like the whole antenna is coming online, and
Watch for the
We've been
pulses.
working, she's been working with me, lots of pulsations and seeing lots of things. So it's just really purifying. And lots was happening on the plane I was in, still point breathing. Now I can just trust and be patient, as you said in the sessions. So yeah,
Fabulous.
yeah, thank you so much. I just honored that I listened.
Well, honored to be part of the process for
Yay.
taking life to the next level.
Yes, yes, I can't wait. I knew I was coming to, I'm upgraded, coming home. I'm coming into a whole new reality. My son picked me up, and so sweet because he's at the lake, which is an hour away, but he came in because he said he would pick me up. I didn't know he was going to be at the lake, but that showed me how much he loved me to come and pick me
Nice.
up. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, welcome to the show.
Thank
And
you.
welcome, everybody. We're delighted that you're here, that we get to have this conversation and move forward on the next level. As I said, I am blessed today
I
to
didn't, let me
be.
first say welcome. This is Wednesday, June the 4th, 2024. Welcome to the second hour of Mindshifters Radio. Apologies. Go for it, Michael.
Cool. Okay. I'm going to just see if I can move my phone over here for a second and share. Many of you from, when Arya was the size that Lincoln is now, will remember how many days I spent with Arya in the crook of my arm doing the radio show. So
Doesn't get better than that, to be held in love, to be embraced in someone's love. It's kind of blurry. There we
Yeah, we got
Too dark. Yeah.
Alexa, turn on the light.
Well, there we go.
No, it's still a little blurry, but here we are.
Mhm.
And probably did about a year and a half with Aria when she was growing. She is here every day, and this is actually the first time that Lincoln has been in a quiet place to do this with me. So it's pretty sweet, pretty awesome.
Yeah, beautiful.
Alexa, turn off the light. So we're open to conversation. Delighted that you're here. Susan, welcome. And let's see if we've got any questions or thoughts from yesterday's show or anything going on in anybody's world you need support with. If
Michael,
so, just unmute yourself. Yes, Miss Susan.
thanks for the paper. I read through it and I noticed a couple of just punctuation errors, so I want to fix those and send it back to you. And
Oh, please.
my support group wants to read it. With your permission, I'm sure that's okay because you want it to be out there.
Absolutely. And let me know when you're going to do it, and I'll make sure to, at least if possible, to make the space to be on the show, on your Zoom call.
Oh, great. Okay.
Cool. I'd love to
Yeah,
participate in that.
we would love to have you. It is just the ticket. It's using the tools with the problem with, Gaza and Israel, the Jews and stuff that we were talking about. And as part of that today in our support group, which just finished, Carrie Lee was telling us that Donald Trump is acting like a disruptor because so many of our systems are not what we need or want anymore. And that saying that, I've heard that before, but not recently, that actually he's doing in a way that we may not like and have to do wake-up sheets for, but he's doing something that may have needed doing. I'd like to think there would have been a better way to do it, but it allowed me to sort of widen the idea of what I would consider darkness or evil. If we stretch the circle out wider, we can see it as all good. And I know that that's something I'm not even able to do, but I understand the idea. And it allows us also to soften and allow and consider other possibilities than the set of possibilities I go into, which is usually this is bad and we've got to fix it and we've got to protest, and perhaps we do, but with a different perspective. So your paper is very applicable on that level too. I hope
Yeah,
that made sense.
I hear you. I'm not sure I agree wholeheartedly, but my take is that most people at war, whether it's the family system or whether it's two individuals, in the culture, or whether it's a national or international scene, everybody lives in a construct of their minds in which the person on the other side of the fence is the problem,
Yeah.
a result of living in denial and dissociation. And both sides of most every conflict want to stay in that place
Yeah.
and, of course, get the other to change so that things will get better. So we have, accords, and we have agreements, and we have, compromises, and we have solutions. But all of those solutions are working within the context of the problem and simply exacerbate the problem unless there's healing that occurs. We have an old family squabble going on in the Middle East. It's been going on for thousands of years, and until each party to that squabble takes responsibility for the constructs of their own minds, and there are 1,000 justifications. Did people on one side do unjust, horrible, tragic, traumatic, destructive, evil, wicked things? Yes. Did people on the other side do the same? Yes.
Right.
So now, who's going to actually do the healing work to put an end to war rather than, well, let's see if we can find a negotiated settlement?
Right.
Well, a negotiated settlement that leaves people with their internally generated conflicting realities intact is no solution. It's just going to cycle along. Well, it might clean things up for a little while, but sooner or later, healing
Right.
has to happen. And so that's, of course, the point of that article.
I
That's
understand. And tell me what you didn't agree with what I said, because I agree with what you are saying totally. It's got to be a totally different approach, and taking full responsibility for ourselves and how we feel.
Yes. And my take is that when people do damage to others through hostility and fear, there needs to be accountability. One of my early mentors was a Superior Court judge in Albany, Georgia. This man had been the head of the prison system for the state of Georgia, and then as a lawyer became a judge and ended up in the Superior Court of the state of Georgia. And I watched him as he would bring heinous criminals into his courtroom, and he would sentence them perhaps to life in prison,
Right.
but not in order to punish them, but because they were a danger to the community and creating harm within the community.
Right.
And he would literally say to them, love you like a brother, but the community you live in, he would literally say this, your community took up a collection and built a building with iron bars around it and asked me to determine who is safe to be in the community and who isn't.
Mm-hmm.
And those doing damage to others in the community are not safe. And therefore, I'm going to put you in prison for the next 50 years or whatever.
Right.
And then he would offer them, the course we developed. It was actually Judge Kelly that asked us to develop a course for such a purpose for the prisons. And that's what originally Laws of Living, it was originally called Emotional Maturity Instruction, was written by an attorney, Dan McDougald. And then Dan and I met, and we realized we'd been traveling parallel roads with the Aramaic, and we put the two approaches together and created Laws of Living. And Judge Kelly would sentence people to Laws of Living with the idea of, I'm here to support your healing. I'm not here to punish you. And so my take is those who do harm through hostility or fear to others need to be exposed and held accountable. And, there are systems within this larger system that's set up that if there's something that isn't working, something that isn't appropriate, there are systems and ways for that to be changed. And if people want those things to be changed, then I think they need to be working within those systems. Setting loose a destructive, hateful, vengeful force, to me, is not a constructive approach to changing the game. And that type of force needs to be held accountable, and especially where there's criminal activity, which has been, it's interesting, and I don't want to get deep into politics here, but, there have been, I don't remember how many jurors, grand jury and jurors who listened to all of the evidence. And it's interesting, in 100% of the cases, 100% of the jurors voted guilty. And my take is that needs to be held accountable, not excused by, well, there were some systems that weren't working, so somebody has to tear them down. That would be my take.
So, Michael, what I'm saying and what you're saying, I think are consistent, but I wasn't dealing with the, well, I was in a way. I mean, you calling Mr. Trump a disruptor, and we needed the disrupt. And you're saying, no, there is a better way. I would totally agree with that. But what are we required to do on our end? And grassroots, living in peace with one another, one on one, learning to respect the planet and perhaps grow healthy food, perhaps in our own yards, because the food distribution and growing of food has been disrupted and become unhealthy. I think what Carrie was talking about was we must begin to do that, whatever happens on the other end with the disruptor sorts. And yes, wouldn't it be great if we had a correction like that wonderful judge who would help us and guide us and correct us without the violence that's going on. I don't know what to say about the violence in the disruptor. I'm hoping there is a better way, but this is the way we're getting. So what do we do with this way?
Well,
Yeah,
my
go ahead.
take would be, is that article on healing war applies to everything that we're talking about here in America today. I
Absolutely.
mean, I wrote it specifically because of what was going on in the Middle East, but
Mhm.
the whole article is what we need to do. It's all of the above.
Mhm. Right.
We already
have it underneath our nose. The solution is already underneath our nose. It's that all of this 5 years that I've been following the Aramaic perception, it happens to be a one-on-one waking up. But what we do is we keep our eyeballs on what we don't want. And so we miss all of the very quiet individuals and grassroots, I do too, of what's changing, because we insist on looking at what hasn't changed yet. I agree with you, Michael, also. We have to hold people accountable. But we can't hold people lovingly accountable until we hold ourselves lovingly accountable. We can't help people be lovingly responsible unless we hold ourselves lovingly responsible. And the thing of it is I haven't read the book yet, but when I read your article, Michael, that I hope you sent me, the articles in your revision or condensation, Susan, I really am looking forward to looking at them, is that there's a book out there written by a Grace Lee Boggs. She was a Chinese lady born around the turn of the 20th century. The first woman, I don't know if she was the first Chinese woman or the first woman to go to Harvard or one of these big prestigious universities.
Right.
She was a hardcore communist. She was a socialist. She evolved in her living life experiences. She married a black gentleman. That's where the name Boggs comes from. And she lived to be, I believe, 100. She was an adamant, she thought that Martin Luther King was just a patsy until at the end, towards the end of her life, she and her husband realized in the 80s or so, after the assassination of Martin Luther King, that he was right on target, and they did she did a total turnaround in her thinking. But she has had a book. She wrote a book with a gentleman with a Japanese name that called The New American Revolution, and it's all grassroots, and it's all peace-centered. And she, as far as I'm aware of, she hit all of the levels, Susan, that you were just asking about. Personal. I think the first war is between the yin and the yang, the woman and the man, whatever you want to call it. I prefer yin and yang because that's not identified with the sexual organs. And that's energies all of us hold in some proportion or another. She also was interviewed by Bill Moyers, So you can find her interview, I'm pretty sure, probably on
Cool.
YouTube. She was 90 some years old, and she ended that interview with, "We are the leaders we have been looking for."
Right on. Yeah,
And
it's
so I
all of the
wanted to
above.
share that with
All of the
you.
above.
I wanted to share
Oh.
that with you in case anyone listening out there or us, I think I shall go see if I can find that book in the library and get it and read it, because it was one of those on my wanna read list, but in the 4 moves it disappeared. Just got given to the library or whatever. So I just wanted
Right.
to share that with you, ladies and
Cool.
gentlemen, everyone out there listening. Thank you. I'm Celinda, by the way, in case you didn't recognize who I was.
Thank you, Celinda. Appreciate
I
it.
love
And
you
yes,
all.
and extending love in your direction too, young lady.
Yeah, hopefully I'm young, because I'm about 3 years old, and I feel like when I look in the mirror, I say, "Who is that old woman?"
When we choose to breathe and capture every frequency that's less than love and every self-deprecating thought, like who's that old woman, and we forgive as to it, we youth instead of age.
Well, I think I'll just both and. I'll just let it be what it is and do my very best to cancel out my resistance to life as it flows.
Yay.
And
Nice work.
I'm willing to embrace it all.
Joining you.
All right, thanks.
sure.
That's enough for me
All right.
for today.
I'd like to make an offering as well. I
Go
just
for it,
came
Susan.
from I just came from the retreat with Michael, and then also we did 4 days with him in the quantum still point healing, which was amazing. And I really landed for me that everything in the outer world, of course, as we know, is really in the content of our own mind. And it can be, looking at collectively that's happening, but it really isn't happening there. It's happening within our mind. So anything, as we know, we're being taught, anything that comes up is using the Aramaic forgiveness. So, and I heard, Susan, you kept calling disruptor, that was illustrated in your language throughout your entire conversation. So that might be something to look at within and seeing what's underneath that. And it might, as we know, it's in the carbon-based memory that's hidden deep in the unconscious, but especially the emotion that it evokes within us. That's the tell that there's something beneath that to find. And I know, it's easy for us to look outwards, but and even this morning in the Course in Miracles, because I happen to be doing that right now, but it says, my salvation comes from me. Right? It's I will not look for it outside of myself. It is not found outside and then brought in, but from within it will reach beyond, and everything I see will but reflect the light that shines in me and in itself. That means
Thanks.
everything.
Thanks,
believe-
Susan. I wanna go a little further with that. The
Sure.
word I heard, and I don't know where I heard this, someone said it takes a great soul to step up and cause the disturbance that is needed to cause profound change in a culture. And from that perspective, you might say that Mr. Trump is a great soul who has chosen to be vilified by many people in the process of coming here on the earth to stir things up to the point where we grow. Now, I'm talking about external things again, and you're talking about it's all in our minds. And I'm not arguing with you.
Mhm.
I'm just trying to see both sides of that and understand the two of them and get them closer together. Because in my mind, I'm still seeing people out there. I'm trying to see them with love and wish them well. But on the other hand, they're still outside my mind. I haven't admitted this is all from my mind.
Yeah. So if I heard you, it is the looking within your mind and outside of the mind what's actually going on and seeing, bringing it close together to bring it into balance. And that you believe that Donald is a disruptor that is one of the great souls to come in and cause this great disturbance that's going to shift humanity. I understand that, and it's, for me, it's just always an inner journey, and whoever's led, knowing that in the highest truth of God, I believe everything is serving our experiences. We're on a journey for the evolution of our soul. That's the foundation
Right.
for us to
And
return, as we know. And I don't think the mind's ever going to figure it out. It's as long as we're doing our healing and following the Aramaic forgiveness, it will fall into place naturally, because that's God's way.
And even if it means the total destruction of us and the planet, it still has to be held in that bigger view that even that is love and that is acceptable. And I'm getting that in my brain, but I sure don't feel that way.
Yeah, and you know what? Because all we have is the present moment. There is no future. So even that you said the thought of, oh my God, even if that means the destruction of the planet, you're going to the future. And there is no future and there is no past, because we only exist in the present moment. And the present moment is right now, and we're safe right here, right now. Anything we
Thank
see,
you.
anything that we see that takes us to the future or the past, we're in the carbon-based memory of the non-being mind. And so when we bring ourselves back here and just continue to follow the process of the Aramaic forgiveness that brings up in us, I know I can assure you in my heart that we're on a journey. The Course in Miracles says this. We're on a journey without distance to a place we never left. All we're doing is getting our minds to remember that.
And
Yeah.
and I think we need to be aware of defining great soul as someone who creates a disruption, because that would mean that people like Al Capone, Genghis
Hitler.
Khan, Hitler were great souls. Excuse me. I'm not gonna buy into that one. I think that we live in an energy system that is designed to work in a way that was called law. And when we step outside of the way the system is designed to operate and destroy, I think yes, we could call the destruction disruption, but I would hesitate to put those two words together. And I certainly join everyone in this conversation right now, because I think that we're talking about someone with such a level of trauma and pain in their structures that what they need is millions extending and radiating love in the direction of their healing and support. And on a regular basis, that's something that I do with the gentleman we're talking about. And accountability is still appropriate within the confines of our culture.
Thanks, Michael. You know, I can get a toehold when I hear you say what you're saying. I feel as if I can participate in healing and take some kind of action. I am just not able to feel the truth of the fact that this is all in our minds. And so that's where there's a gap for me.
Well,
I'm just not there yet.
okay, let me throw in a thought there. You know, there's a place in the Course where it speaks about, think not you made the world, illusions, yes. So we're talking about, and you know, we're all of our language, all of our words are based on the constructs of our minds, and so all of our words are representations of illusory energetic patterns projected from the mind. And many people working with the course will say, well, we created the world. The course is very clear. Think not you made the world. Illusions, yes. So these constructs of our minds based in words, that's why the course says the truth cannot be spoken in words, much as we might try to. The words are limited to giving us the tools with which to go to do the work and do it and experience directly what the result the course is aiming for. It's never going to be explained. It's never going to come from words. Only the tools can have that power. So there is a world of actuality created by the creator. That lesson, what is the world, uses the word world in two different ways. I wish when they punctuated the course that they had used, when they're representing the actuality, what the creator created, used a capital W for that word world,
Right.
and then a lowercase word world for the world of perception, the world we made.
Right.
And so the words are never going to represent the actuality, but using the tools will take us to an experience. And the experience is that of ourselves as the presence of active love brought into a multi-generational database that we call the body mind unit, that contains errors in thought, unresolved issues, unresolved traumas of 1,000 generations. And by bringing that forward, we're going to dissolve the issues of the generations and finally move into the experience we're designed for by the creator. And I see that Don has his hand up. Don, what's your thought on this topic, Don?
Can you hear me?
You're loud and clear, sir.
Yeah, I've heard that idea about Trump being a disruptor before, and in a certain sense, I can kind of see it. But I agree with you, Michael Moore. Not Michael Moore. I agree with you that that's a little bit of a stretch. If you want to accept that, you would like you mentioned, you would have to accept Hitler, Genghis Khan, every despot tyrant who's gone throughout history as a disruptor. And I think it's foolish to think that when this so-called disruption is finished, that the world is going to be better. Okay, because it certainly wasn't better after those previous people that you would have to call a disruptor. This term disruptor is typically used to talk about technology, which we've had throughout history. Internal combustion engines disrupted, transportation by horse and buggy, and Elon Musk, even, hate to mention his name, but promoting electric cars and being successful to the point he has, he's disrupted the internal combustion. So that's gone on forever. So yeah, I think it's a little dangerous to think that when he came into the world and he's disrupting. Now, I will say that I think many of our social structures have been broken long before Trump came along. I mean, our government has been broken. The way we practice capitalism in this country is broken.
Well, humans are fallible.
Right.
Humans make mistakes, no question.
Yeah.
And on that disruptor topic, before we move away from that, all destruction is disruptive.
Right.
But I don't think it fits the definition of disruptor as it's used in a constructive sense. It's destruction.
Right.
And where hostility and fear rule the day, that's where forgiveness comes in. And each who holds some sort of pain or trauma within themselves needs to engage in the process of forgiveness. And I just have a little guy here who was laying on my shoulder, who's awakened and looking around and laying down on my face. So, bringing love into the fray.
So, Donald, thank you. In my group, this disruptor idea was introduced, and I thought it made a lot of sense. But I certainly like what you, Michael, are saying, and Don, you're saying. I'm maybe trying too hard to marry what Susan was saying because she has really deeply taken in the Course in Miracles principle and seems very peaceful, Susan. I have to hand it to you. I'm not in a state of the kind of peace you seem to be experiencing, and I want a quick fix over here.
All of the above, Susan. It's
May I make a couple more comments?
please go for it, Celinda.
First of all, in the actuality, there's a passage in the Way of Mastery that says all events are neutral, and that they take on a good or bad flavor depending on how we choose to judge or interpret them. That's the actuality. And then our reality.
I would disagree with that thinking.
Okay. Well, let me go on to something else then.
Okay.
So I think of the word disruption as basically a neutral word. I bring the meaning to it. For me, it's both and. It can be considered to have negative results, or it could be considered to have positive results, or it could be considered to be both and. And I would like to say that there is another expression: before we can have a breakthrough, we have to have a breakdown. So when we go through confusion, it's a disruption, but it's not necessarily negative, and it's not necessarily positive. It depends on the outcome. That's where I agree with you, Michael. The outcome, we have choice. We also have the outcome. The outcome belongs to our choice. We have.
Well, there are places, my offering, Susan, or Celinda, my offering would be that no, where there is disruption, we do not always have a choice. I think that there are two distinctly different definitions of that word that need to be considered. And like, for instance, cancel the thought. If somebody comes along and drops a bomb on your home, they've disrupted your home. But the choice to say this is wondrous and wonderful, well, maybe I was ready to die, and maybe I was ready to, drop my, I could do all that sort of theoretical stuff. But I think that in some cases, there are people who are using the word disruption in place of what should be destruction. Destruction is always disruptive, but
it goes beyond that because it's a tearing down.
And
yet
the key is
life,
hostility or fear involved in the action and the activity, or is it coming from a space of the presence of conscious active love?
I have no disagreement with that at all. I think it's probably semantics and what the words mean to each of us in relation to our life experience. I agree with you. It's like, what is the result of the decisions I've made in relation to love, fear, and hostility, or separation, hate, that you so helpfully defined for me from the ancient Aramaic. I agree with that. So what I'm saying is I'd like to go back to the metaphor of the Garden of Eden. When we decided that it's all just a metaphor. But at some point, we stop listening to each other when we assume we know and the other doesn't. And what I have to offer, which may be true or not, and I may change my mind tomorrow afternoon, is that we do not have when we take sides, we are assuming automatically that we know. And because we know, excuse me, and because we know and we're right, we have the obligation to get our own way. And then that's where the war starts, is because we have decided that we know, which is basically one of the flags of our Western orientation, whereas the mystics of all countries, but especially in the East, they come from, we don't know, I don't know, I have no clue, I don't know. And so what I offer is that I want to learn to listen to both sides, to all sides, not just the two parties, to all sides, and bring everybody to the table. And people are doing this one-on-one in Israel, in Palestine. They're defining their own
There's some powerful work going on.
One-on-one. And so what I'm learning, and who was the other lady that mentioned about our realities are in our mind?
Susan.
Thank you very much for.
Susan's new to the show. Welcome, Susan. Glad you're here.
Susan. Two Susans.
Yes.
So anyway, what's sweet about that is because now I can make a distinction or a discernment that I, as a co-creator, am allowed to either align myself with spirit. Now, this is in my head, and I'm practicing it. I'm taking all of this lab work I'm doing, and I'm going to take it out into the field where the rubber hits the road. Yeah. So that I want to really grok the fact that if I am in any negativity of any kind, I'm swimming around in my own reality that I have co-created. So my big thing, and I think my kyphosis and osteoporosis is my wake-up call to say, you are not aligned with spirit.
Got your attention.
So I want to offer this so that what I need to learn as I babble on, the Queen of Babylon here, that I set up and that I start to learn listening. And so I'm very grateful to everything that every one of you has said today. Dawn, Susan, you, Michael, me. And I get to play in that sandbox and find out what I need to throw out and what I need to keep and make a sandcastle out of.
Yes. And I think that, when we get back to the bottom line of how do we keep this whole process on track, it's the responsibility of each individual. And if one loads a goal into their minds that causes their minds to use some form of hostility or fear to produce the guidance that comes forward, then each person needs to be self-responsible. And when people become self-responsible, then they can step out and become externally responsible. And I think that, in terms of, again, without getting into a whole lot of politics, that we need to have engagement, that everybody needs to step up to the plate and participate. So I think inspiring each other in that regard is also important. But the only action that I would use, let's add an adjective to disruption. Let's call it constructive disruption. Something that's going to lead to an upgrade for and in humanity and the individuals involved is going to have to come from love. And if it's coming from some form of hostility or fear, then we're in a mistake that we need to learn to be responsible for and forgive.
And the first moment that I insist that I'm right, I'm in trouble already for my own creating of my reality.
Yes.
Or
Yay.
wrong. Doesn't matter.
Yay.
Yay. May we all become responsible and therefore accountable.
Yeah. And choose to recognize that if we're going to be human, if we're actually going to function as human beings, there was a guy 2,000 years ago who said, here's the first requirement. There's a condition in your mind that needs to be active. It's called Rachma. It will keep you on track with your human essence. And unfortunately, the world has not had the opportunity to even know that that's possible. or how to do it, or such a thing even exists. So to me, the dedication to bringing forth those first century Aramaic ideas of Yeshua is where one of the core principles of how do we constructively bring this forward exists.
And I just wanted to, in the expression, just add one thing
Please go for it.
around words. And, we talked about that at the intensive, but
Yes,
words have an energy, as we know. And in this illusion that we're in, I notice a lot of times that I see words have been interpreted upside down and backwards. And I do spend a lot of time to go and look at the original meaning of a word. And
yes,
what people interpret it or perceive it to mean is something different to the energetic pattern of what it originally was intended. And then taking in the language of the group speak. So we talked about the word disruptor, for example, and like, you clarified what we have to look what its actual meaning is, which is not of love. That's based in the non-being mind. So to be really learning how to be really precise with our language, and then to recognize whether the language we're speaking is coming from the place of love or whether it's actually rooted in the non-being mind. And then that also helps us to clear out our own mind and make more space for love to come in.
yes,
And as you said, it's symbology. So there's symbols trying to describe symbols.
yes.
Words are a symbol that's describing a illusory world, which is not, it's a symbol of our own mind. So
And those words are twice removed from the fact, from the
from,
actuality, which
yes,
then, it's just crazy time.
yeah. And that's it. So yeah, exactly. We're twice removed from the truth. So the only
Yeah,
thing, as it takes us back, all we can do is clean up our own mind.
yeah,
That's where love
that's it.
exists. Yeah.
It's where the work is. Well, there is another step we can do. And then having cleaned up our own minds, then we can step forward and participate in the collective,
That's yes.
in the
And
larger picture,
yeah,
and
we
do
can
it
bring it.
from a human space, which is going to tend to bring true human results forward, because a mind that has never known what Rahma is and does not know how to engage it or that such a things exist really doesn't have a human mind. It just has a structure based in words and experiences that it calls self, and it isn't self at all.
Mhm.
So it's definitely an interesting process to step up to the plate and do.
Yeah, and back to what Susan was saying, to have the experience of something like I loved what you just said. Words don't represent actuality. It's pointing to it like we point to the moon, but to have the visceral experience of something, then you know it.
Mm,
And no one can take you off a knowing of your experience. Once you've
mm,
experienced it,
Exactly.
you know it. So that's all of our journeys. I think just anyone that's going to listen to this, anyone on our awakening journey goes through this.
mm,
It's a process that we just find within our own faith and the trust of our own heart, because the kingdom of God is within us. And we just stay rooted and keep walking the path. And eventually, the rose, it's like a rose, that one petal at a time, it starts
mm.
to unfurl. And then the essence of our whole identity is revealed in our true nature. So I just offer that, Susan. You're on the right track. And finding your way to this beautiful being who's leading this podcast, we must
Yeah,
all be doing something right,
yeah.
because we are in the midst of truth.
I think so. Susan, this is an aside, but how do you pronounce your last name?
My last name is pronounced Fluick.
Fluick. Thank you. Okay, good. Because
So
we
we'll
have
have
to.
Susan B and Susan F from now on.
Okay, good.
Cool. Well, I'd like to open the space. We haven't heard anything from Jeannie or Kathy or Sally. If any of you have a thought on the conversation we're having or how the conversation's impacting you, I'd love to hear your share, your thought. If you want to just hit your mute button, if that's appropriate. And it seems that everybody's complete. So any other thoughts to share? If not, then let's just, one of the things I was planning on doing today was touching into the lesson, what is the world? from A Course in Miracles. And if there's an example when I do that particular lesson that I use, and I imagine that we bring a man from the jungles who knows nothing more. The most complex thing he knows is a dugout canoe, and we walk him onto the tarmac in front of the prop plane where the plane propellers are spinning. And you and I know that an airplane propeller is four arms spinning around a pivot point, but this person who is walked onto the tarmac and for the first time in his whole life, he confronts a thing called an airplane and a spinning prop. He looks at it and he sees a shiny silver disc. His mind cannot keep up with the rate of the spin of the propeller, so his mind makes up its best guess, a shiny silver disc. Now, that shiny silver disc exists nowhere in actuality, though he sees it. His mind believes that it exists outside of him because he sees it outside of himself, when in fact what he's looking at is a world made up by his own mind, the world of perception. Now, using that as the metaphor, because everybody believes what they believe, and to get false belief to crash is quite a challenge. But using that as a metaphor, my offering is that the person who's, let's say, feeling angry and rage and experiencing the effects of that energy moving within himself or herself, driven by a goal that they hold within their own minds, and wants to avoid ownership of what's being felt within, believing that what they see, as the man from the jungles looking at the propeller believes that the generated world they see that comes from their mind is actually outside of himself or herself, and one who desires to push away their own unresolved underlying pain, guilt, failures, offenses committed. Those who want to push that outside of themselves do exactly the same, have exactly the same experience as the person looking at the shiny silver disc. They're looking at something generated by their minds that exists only in their minds. And it's the goal to avoid feeling the discomfort, the pain, the trauma within. That goal, resonating underlying pain energies, create this
Hello.
picture from one's own
Oh,
thought
I was just
disorders.
putting things in the refrigerator.
If we could mute
I'm
that.
good. We got another one.
I think I have everyone muted.
Okay, thank you, sweetie. So the goal to avoid feeling the internal trauma, perhaps generations of unresolved pain, anger, sadness, hurt, fear, the goal to avoid that causes the mind to generate a picture that exists, as with our friend from the jungles, only in one place within that mind. And that goal is an effort to push the thought disorders causing the pain, the guilt, the shame, whatever, onto another. The goal for the problem to be outside literally creates a shiny silver disc. And when we're looking at our own shiny silver disc, we're looking literally at the product of the perceptual mind. So precisely the same way as the person from the jungles is looking at a construct sourced by his or her own mind that exists nowhere in the world, one who is in denial of ownership of what's going on inside of them literally makes up a world. And the course, delineates this process as making. the difference between creating and making. There is a created world, and when we live in denial and dissociation through our goals, we make a world that externalizes, or at least does the best to push the guilt outside of us, the fear outside of us, the pain that's being felt. And so the person from the jungles and the person living in projection is living in a self-made hologram. And that hologram contains no life, only the energies of death and self-destruction. Now, that individual who does that believes that they pushed the cause of their pain, their guilt, their fear outside of themselves. And that seems to alleviate one from the pain. But if you look in the last result, it only alleviates one of the responsibility. The pain is still felt. And so the process of projection solves nothing. It just leaves one where they are holding these unconscious dynamics, things they're not able to access within themselves. And to me, the genius of this man, Yeshua, to have come along 2,000 years ago and said, well, if you're living in projection, if you're living in a world of a shiny silver disc that exists only in your mind, and you're in pain about it, I have a way to show you how to access the underlying energetic dynamic that you've hid from yourself. One cannot successfully push their guilt or their pain outside of themselves, no matter how convincing the lying construct of their mind appears to be. Can't do it. So the lesson from A Course in Miracles, what is the world? The world is false perception. It's a shiny silver disc. Anyone in pain is living in a shiny silver disc. And that this genius piece of information is there, which empowers us to collapse that world and process the disease-producing energies within ourselves out of the system, to me, is just a monumental gift. And my thought is, unless the conversation wants to go in a different direction tomorrow, which I'll be delighted if it does, is we'll delve deeper into that lesson, what is the world? And so we're down to the last minute. Anyone have a last minute thought to offer? Well, then I'm going to say much, much gratitude and appreciation for joining us, and invite every person you know to come join us tomorrow. Blessings.